What does it mean to be a good human being? Everybody asks themselves that question at some point or the other in their lives, and that is what I'm going to be talking about today from a psychoanalytic lens. I will also be taking in some aspects of Buddhism into all of this because that does tie in very well together with what I am going to be talking about. So, in his seminal work, The Seminar 7, The Ethics of Psychoanalysis, Jacques Lacan argued that as soon as you give space to your desire, as soon as you allow yourself to pursue what is really your desire, you are an unethical human being. And this plays in very well with the fact that we are a consumerist society at this point. We desire after objects, we pursue after very many objects and not only objects. We desire to be seen as somebody who is in possession of a certain type of object. You would have noticed that there is a certain population who desires after certain types of vehicles, of goods, of products that may tie into them appearing as living a luxurious lifestyle, as them looking as if they were elites, as them looking in a very classist and casteist ways, often as if they were the echelons of society, the higher echelons, as it were. But Jacques Lacan argues about desire in a very specific way, right? He argues that as soon as you desire something to derive pleasure out of it, as soon as you desire something because something in the object pulls you, there is something about that object that is not sayable, as it were. And this is also tying in the traumatic dimension of desire with jouissance, as it were. This is about how to be a good human being, not only for other people, but for yourself. So argued Buddha as well, that the desire of something is the root of all suffering. Desire plays into a lot of things in our everyday life, right? But what we are talking about specifically here is not the fulfillment of needs. We are not talking that, we are not saying or arguing that we want to be ascetics. I'm not arguing for that at all. I do not mean that you should not want for the basic necessities of your life to be fulfilled, nor that you should not wish to be successful in a very specific way that you want to be successful in. What I am arguing here, and what Jacques Lacan is arguing, and what arguably Freud also argued, as did Buddha, is that as soon as you achieve that which you desire after, you are left unsatisfied. You are left with a void that cannot really be fulfilled by any real or fantasied object, because only in fantasy, if at all, does that object ever come to exist that could fulfill all your desires, that could give you pleasure. Is something that everybody wants, and everybody wants to avoid unpleasure. Now, in this, let's add a subtype of pleasure. Right? Pleasure that is derived out of agreement with the social contract of behaving in civil ways that are culturally appropriate for where you are at. Now, these cultural ways can themselves be malignant or helpful in community building. They can be conducive to ethical living, sustainable living, or to ill living. I'm not going to go into any depths of that particular thing because there is a lot more to unpack there, and what I really want to talk about is desire, pleasure, and how to be an ethical human being. So, according to Lacan, as I have said already, but this is deeper going and I'm going to make it more understandable as I go on. Desire for pleasure is because of something that exists in an object that attracts you to it. That he has called object small a or object pati a. If you were to go after what you desire, you're not really going after what you desire as the object. It is some quality of the object. And as soon as you have what you desire, as soon as you have the pleasure you are seeking out of that object, you are going to be left seeking another object, because desire, which is equal to, in let's say oversimplified terms, object small a, that is, it is equal to what pulls you about that object into desiring. It is not about that object real in any real sense. It is about your fantasy about that object which really attracts you. I'll give you an example, right? Let's imagine somebody wants a Range Rover. Why do they want a Range Rover? It is not that they really want a vehicle that looks that specific way because they like how it looks. Excuse me. What they really like about that vehicle is what it will make other people think about them. Let's say a person wants a luxurious villa. They do not want it because it will have 104 rooms or 28 bathrooms or any of that. They do not have that many relatives, nor are they planning to form a commune. What they want it for is to be perceived in a very specific light. That is, as somebody who lives luxuriously, as somebody who can, as it were, spend all of that money because it is extra for them. It is to showcase their being part of the higher echelon of society. As soon as you go after something, you are going to remain unfulfilled. And this very argument is central to the Lacanian ethics, that it is because you go after an object that you experience displeasure as well. And you cause yourself displeasure at the sake, at the behest of what you desire. So, as soon as you come into desiring, the best thing you can do is to not go after it. As soon as you go after it and as soon as you achieve it, you are going to want something else. It is going to be displaced and replaced by something absolutely different, possibly, but that different thing is now going to be where object small a is placed. Now, this also ties in with Buddhism very well, actually. Insofar as Buddhism and Gautama Buddha talked about desire being the root of all suffering, and I have talked about this before, is related very deeply, and even to the extent that Jacques Lacan has taken up the Buddhist project in one of his works, at least that I know of, the 10th seminar, I think, Anxiety. He talks about a lot of other things there as well, but I'm going to limit myself to the 7th seminar. Honestly, also because I did not get through that 10th seminar just yet. I'm going to talk about that later, possibly. But how it ties in is this: the root of all suffering being desire is not because you should not achieve what you desire, but because you are not really after the object you desire, you are really after the desire of desire. This ties in with Arthur Schopenhauer, with the Upanishads, with Freud as well, in fact. It harks back to Schopenhauer's very famous quote that you can will something, but you cannot decide what it is you are going to will. You can want something, as it were, but you cannot decide what it is that you want. So said Nietzsche as well. And coming to Freud now, there are two principles of mental functioning formulated by him in a paper of the same name. In that, he talks about how there exist two drives in every human being. One that is genetically inborn, the desire for seeking pleasure by going after your desire, that is, and experiencing that as an object of pleasure. And this ties again to Kant as well. I will talk about that soon. And second, as to how you come into existence as a person existing in a civilization, somebody who has to deal with the everyday reality of existence, as somebody who has to deal with other people as existing, as having motivations other than yourself, as having experiences, emotions, desires other than yourself, and allowing their prohibition to take charge of your pleasure principle. This becomes in, well, two sub phases: first into the reality principle and later on into the moral principle. So it is that the more moral or ethical, rather, you want to be, the less you are allowed, or you should allow rather, space to your desire, to pursue your desire. Now, how it ties back to Kant is, I'm going to say it in a very succinct manner. Kant argues that you cannot use somebody as a means to an end. Desiring has this very inherent quality of being a means to an end. The means being the desired object, and the end being the pleasure you receive from that desired object. So, how to be a good human being, you will ask? Don't pursue your desire. It is that simple and it is that complex. See you next time.